Hello everyone, today we are taking a look at the changes that Mistweaver got in Phase 4 of the Midnight Alpha. Today is just talents and hero talents. Starting out with removed talents, we have Spearhand Strike and Energy Transfer. They've removed all kicks from healers except for Resto Shaman, who now has a 30-second kick. The reasoning for this is basically taking some things off of the healer plates, but I honestly don't like this change. Having agency is a good thing, and removing kicks from healers is just removing agencies. I'm aware that they said they'll be reducing kick requirements and dungeons are going to be made with the idea that you'll have one less kick in the group overall. I'm just not a fan of this change, and I would rather healers keep their kicks regardless of the dungeon changes that they make. In all honesty, this is not very likely to affect high-end players since we're typically in Discord and have set rotations for dungeons, and the healer kick is typically a backup anyway. This is more heavily going to impact pug players and lower end keys where you're not in comms and you don't have as much coordination. There's been so many times where a healer, even as a backup kick, has been key saving, and losing that feels really bad. It felt bad in BFA, and it felt bad in Shadowlands, and I don't have the expectation that that will change in Midnight. Energy Transfer was removed from Mistweaver since we no longer have our interrupts, and currently both of these talents are under construction, so we don't have replacements yet. I would like to see something that would reduce maybe the cooldown on Ring of Peace like Sleep and Paralysis to encourage Mistweaver to continue to CC and contribute to stops even if we're missing our kick. Over on the spec tree, we say goodbye to the two T talents, Tea of Plenty and Tea of Serenity. I was actually pretty excited to play with these now that they were in a better position, but I do think that they maybe caused issues with Conduit of the Celestials and the frequency of Thunder Focus Tea that led to their removal. I'm hoping to see them back in a different part of the tree maybe, or maybe on a choice node on something like Focus Thunder instead of just being removed entirely, but we'll have to wait and see. Refreshing Jade Wind is also being removed. I'm not super surprised since this was on a choice node with Mistrap and it was never taken, so now Mistrap is just its own node. We got one new talent to replace the T talents, and that is called Amplified Rush. This is something that is going to cause a gust of mist proc from renewing mist applications to do 50% more. I'm kind of sad that this is what replaced the T talent since this is passive and we very rarely actually use renewing mist in Mythic Plus at all. Maybe this will change at Midnight since there's heavier emphasis on renewing mist counts, but generally this one's kind of whatever. Celestial Harmony got a little bit of a rework on the Yulon side of things. Now it just reduces the cast time of Enveloping Mist by 60% to make up for the loss of Invoker's Delight. The wording of the tooltip says reduce cast speed, but it does make it faster, so it should either say reduce cast time or increase cast speed, but it does function properly. There was a few numerical changes, namely Yulon's Whisper being buffed by another 100%. Invigorating Mist increases Shaylin's gift healing by 500% on the primary target, up from 75, which is pretty significant. And the Chi-Ji Gust of Mist got reduced by 50%, which is in line with them moving power out of cooldowns as they've been basically doing all of Alpha. The rest of this build was fixing interactions primarily between Spirit Font and a few other bug fixes here and there with Soothing Mist and Jade Serpent Statue. Conduit of the Celestials talents got an update following the removal of Refreshing Jade Wind. Restore Balance is now just 5% increased healing during your Celestial, which is nice. I would also expect to see Flight of the Red Crane updated, since I can't imagine using Spinning Crane Kick on single target on bosses is something they want us to do to proc Flight. We finally have our Master of Harmony row. This is Harmonic Surge, which is exciting and not surprising, considering Conduit also got the tier set implemented. I was worried about Tiger Palm becoming a weak button again, but in this case, it does still have some weight to it through Harmonic Surge, and thankfully this is the 4-set version, so there's less RNG involved. Potential Energy is the second node, and this is just what's going to cause Rising Sun Kick or Rushing Wind Kick to proc Harmonic Surge for the next Tiger Palm or Vivify, so you can play around and plan out your Rising Sun Kick cast, or just turn off your brain and use it as maintenance healing. And lastly, Zenith is just a passive that buffs Ancient Teachings by an additional 50% on our conversion. Overall, this was a pretty good build for us. I'm not wild about losing our kick, but that's a universal change rather than a monk change. And in the notes, they mentioned that they are adding tuning knobs to allow for better balancing between game modes, i.e. PvP raid keys. And this is definitely a step in the right direction as we go into Alpha Phase 5 and Beta shortly after.